All right, welcome everybody to this week's K-12 Politics and Tech Update. Tim Watrous, President of Digital Advisors here with Kevin Gordon, President of Capital Advisors. Kevin, great to see you.
Great to be on again.
Awesome. Well, there's no shortage of news today, right? Lots of great things happening this week. I know we were talking a little bit earlier about the PPIC poll on education. Could you fill us in on that?
Yeah, so this poll is brand new. It's out. It's significant. It's across education. If we were all, doing the kind of conferences and workshops and meetings that we normally do, these would be amongst some of the updates because that polling is what we always watch. Of course, at the top of the poll is showing that, and it's again specifically on education issues, that there's this overwhelming concern across the state about public education in particular and how we're coping under COVID. It ranks, not surprisingly, the number one concern in K-12 education is our ability to adapt to distance learning and a concern about their kids not being in school. So that's like top of the list of some of the concerns. One of the other ones that's really interesting is it's the largest number of any of the results in terms of where voters are, which is 8 in 10 are very concerned about college readiness for their kids and what the implications of this will be for those seniors. Kind of an interesting number. And then another kind of interesting number in the poll was about their view about teacher salaries. 6 in 10 believe that teacher salaries are too low. It's going to be an interesting dynamic going into a situation where we have a flat or maybe even reduced budgets in California. It's something we definitely want to make sure is part of our argumentation to the legislature and others about any potential reductions in overall school funding means that we're not going to be able to do what we should be doing by the people that work for public schools, but particularly our teachers. The other little piece that's in this poll is in regard to the split roll ballot measure, and Tim, you and I have been tracking that for the last year as it's developed. This is the one that revisits Prop 13, the real Prop 13 on property taxes. And it actually dropped a little bit since the April PPIC poll, which had it at 56% support. That's dropped to 53%. And again, there's no active campaign against it. And when that revs up, and we expect a very robust campaign against split roll, it's going to be interesting how that plays. But it'll also happen at a time when voters will be hearing a lot about budgets that are really strapped for school districts. That could actually bring voters back in our direction. But anyways, that poll's out. We're probably going to do a little update on that and have that out to you guys in the next day or so, probably early next week.
Well, something to keep our eye on for sure, and obviously some of those topics are critical, front of mind for everybody. So we'll keep everyone posted as we roll through the updates. And I know everyone's got LCAP on the mind. There's been a little bit of grace there. Maybe could you talk about the governor's E&O on the LCAP plans?
Yeah, in fact, this is one that we've been waiting for. I've actually said on this broadcast, I think twice, 2 weeks in a row, that we were expecting it any day. Well, it was finally released yesterday. And part of the difficulty was, first of all, the governor had a lot of other executive orders and issues that they were working on. That was part of the problem. But the other issue was they really did reach out to try to engage the legislature. And as the legislative staff and the legislature got involved, there were nuances to this that they definitely wanted to have an imprint on. So we've got the executive order. I've had a lot of questions about some of the nuances of it. It does move the deadline on the LCAP itself from July 1st to December 15th, but there is going to be what's called a supplemental report, just a report that they want submitted on July 1st, this coming July 1st, that would outline key things that the district would be doing as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. It's kind of a bit of an accountability for the fact that they've continued to fund us, but they want to check in on several different things. And I think one of the most important things to note about this, they said this is not intended to be sort of a gotcha where there's no wrong answer. It's an update on what are you doing relative to distance learning. So the technology stuff, Tim, that you and I have been talking about. And I know you've got some things you're going to talk about too today with regard to that. But on that report, there'll be a piece on what have you done on distance learning, a piece on what you've done on meals and serving kids. Also something on if you've done anything on child care or supervision. Don't look at those items as mandates that you have to demonstrate that you actually did them. It's what did you do? And if you didn't have the capacity to do those things, you're going to want to outline that and why. So if there are employer issues that came into the mix here, or there's any other reasons why you did or didn't do anything relative to the COVID-19, this is going to be where you're going to want to report on that. And one of the big things that's going to be in this report is sort of a catch up on what have you done during COVID-19 to address the needs of kids that are part of the unduplicated count. And so, you're just going to be answering that honestly about what services you've been providing to kids and if there has been any differentiation or not. If you are, a high unduplicated count district, you're going to want to talk about the things that you did that differentiate from what you might have done for any other kid and get that information in there. So that's part of this. There are other implications here, so if there is going to be a LCAP and we're going to have that in December, what is that going to look like? Well, we know that there's a template that the state board adopted for this year. That is not going to be the template that's used. Look for a new template that would be used just for this December report. We'll also have some guidance and some facts put out by CDE that are going to help you on this supplemental report that I mentioned. And finally, with regard to the dashboard, we're expecting that the dashboard is also going to end up being set aside, but the governor mentions it in the EO only as a whereas clause, but they're going to leave it up to the legislature, probably in trailer bill language when we do the budget, to actually determine what is exactly happening with regard to the dashboard. Oh, and then one other little thing, there's an item in the executive order with regard to suspending the requirements for the minutes on PE. So those PE minute requirements and accountability is also suspended. So that's the news on that regard to that executive order. We put out a more detailed update on it last night, so you'll want to look for that. If you didn't get that, let me know.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, I know everyone's on that hopefully provides a little bit of relief for folks that were working really hard to get an LCAP out in this environment. So talk a little bit about the dollars that came from the federal government this week and the DeVos dollars, the 1.6 billion headed to California.
We actually put out a little update yesterday, late morning, when Secretary DeVos, kind of right after Secretary DeVos announced that the $1.6 billion, the bigger part of the stimulus package, the $2 trillion stimulus package that was going to be aimed at education, the Secretary got that basically out the door to states. There's an application that every state has to fill out. We think California will waste no time in getting that done. And then it'll be distributed. That 1.6 billion will be distributed statewide based on Title I. There's an allowance for the state to hold back 10% of that amount. We're urging the superintendent to do a couple things with that. One is try to get most of that out to districts that you can distribute, but also keep in mind that not all school districts have Title I kids or have a very low Title I count, and that maybe there's some opportunity to make a difference for those school districts, since we all have the same problems with regard to distance learning and the expenses with regard to meal reimbursement we're not getting, and a lot of other issues that every district has. It's not just the districts that get Title I. So hopefully they'll be able to compensate for that a little bit as they contemplate putting that money out, not forgetting about small school districts as well. So there's more detail on that in our update.
Awesome. Yeah, I know it's everyone's looking for some more support, but that's what we have right now. So thanks for sharing the wisdom there. Budget arguments. I know we were chatting about this before our little session here. Maybe jump in on some of the budget arguments that are happening right now.
Yeah. So I just really wanted to put this on as a reminder again that you guys are doing great work. Capital Advisors, as early as April 8th, said we have to be able to walk and chew gum. We got to argue about the things on meals and distance learning and everything else that we need, and keep working on the legislature with regard to those issues. But we also have to start the conversation about the budget before the legislature and folks that do budget writing in Sacramento get too far down the road on their own preconceived ideas about what to do regarding cuts. So trying to get ahead of that, we put out an advisory that had arguments in it that we wanted to put before state leaders, and that's been really effective. It's turned into lots of different letters from different organizations that have contained the very arguments that we set out in that early April advisory. The two main points that I just wanted to reinforce in your communication with your legislators, if to the degree that you're having meetings with them, you want to emphasize that Prop 98 is not going to be our savior. Prop 98, the guarantee is going to drop a lot. And if we had to get by just on the funding that Prop 98 would get us, we would be in real trouble in school districts. So we need them to do what their conscience tells them to do in keeping a workload budget, basically the current year level of funding. Obviously, it'd be great if we could get the COLA, but I think that's doubtful. But the point is we cannot serve the kids that we're going to need to be able to step up and meet their needs if we're going to end up having dramatic cuts to public education in the state. And there is a direct linkage between what we invest in K-12, getting schools going again, and the ability of this economy in California to really recover. So we want to try to make those arguments. And then finally, that we put on the table, and now we're getting some traction in the media and everywhere else on this idea that we don't want to see an increase in the school portion of STRS PERS obligations in the next 2 years. So we put that argument on the table. We understand the administration's interested in this issue, and it would be an issue that would be covered probably in Trader bill language. So that's what I've got, Tim, for today. And I know you've got some tech ideas that we wanted to chat a little bit about relative to COVID-19 that people really should be thinking about. But before we get to that, I did want to mention that SITE, that's the state organization that represents all your IT professionals and directors, put out something. You want to check out their website. I'm not sure if we've got it again at the end of this presentation, but CITE is the name of the group. Again, it's all our tech directors and tech staff in school districts across the state. They got a COVID-19 update you should see. And then the other thing I want to mention about SITE, they have their annual conference, fortunately for them, not till December. I think there's a really good chance that conference will actually happen. And if it does, I think superintendents and CBOs and others that are watching this should actually think about going this year, because it dives deep into all education technology issues for the state. It would be something where I think you can get even that much more capacity building for yourself around technology issues. So Tim, what else you got?
Yeah, Kevin, I think that's a great recommendation. To be a leader today and really to not have an understanding of technology and how it's driving your connections to your teachers and your administrators and your students, it's going to be a tough road. So learning a little bit more about technology by attending a conference like SITE, I think makes a lot of sense. And it's a great recommendation. And they also have some wonderful resources for you, by the way, on security and many other things. So please check out their resources. Make sure your district's benefiting from those. A couple of things that I've been hearing from folks is the concerns around inventory management. So you've been spending all this time getting devices and trying to get connectivity out to kids, and now you're in a spot where the school year end is, or what we believe would be a traditional end of the school year, is on the horizon, and folks are really kind of concerned about the devices, getting them back potentially, and having to get them ready for next year. So you just kind of got them out there, and now if you didn't really have an inventory management process, you're kind of feeling that pain. And there are ways to manage your inventory within some of the critical systems that you probably already have. So you may not need to go out and get a bunch of new stuff to do this well, but I will just say that there are ways to manage your inventory to make it a little bit easier on you, including being able to monitor those devices that are remote to make sure that they're safe and healthy on your network, and then the ability to remote wipe those. So let's just say the school year ends and you want to move X student from grade 7 to grade 8. You'd have the ability to remotely sort of reprocess that computer so it's set up now for grade 8 with that student. Those are pieces of software that exist. It's not incredibly expensive or that tough to figure out for your teams, but if you haven't really investigated that, I would strongly urge you to start thinking about that now, because this will be a really painful gotcha come June. And, you know, I know everybody's got a lot on their plate right now, but you definitely want to start putting a little bit of time and energy into managing those devices that you have out there. I also want to just really encourage everyone to be worried about phishing attacks and ransomware attacks. They're happening all over, to the largest companies, to education and healthcare and many other places. And the reality is 27% of emails that are malicious that go to your users are going to be clicked on. And that's if you're companies or education or not. That's really scary because 27% of your users are going to click on something malicious. And the question is, are you set up to be able to mitigate that? Do you have any measures in place for when somebody clicks on something bad and ransomware attack begins? Do you have any way to try to stop it or get your data back? And if you're not sure, or the answer is no, I'm going to say you need to understand two things. I mentioned them before. You need to know your phishing score. So we know average is 27%. Where are you? Send out a fake malicious email, see how many people click on it and respond, and actually give yourself a number and try to get that number to go down. That doesn't cost a lot of money, but it's very important to know. And then you got to ask yourself, if I lost all my data tomorrow, when and how can I get it back? And if you don't have an answer, I'm just going to urge you to work with a partner, someone who offers it as a service, to work with your tech team, to work maybe with the County Office of Ed, and try to find a way to have your data sitting in a place where you can get it back quickly. And I know we're kind of getting low on time, Kevin. Those are a few of the big things that I really wanted to cover. And we'll be digging into more next week. So if you, any final thoughts from you, Kevin, as we wrap this up?
Nope, I think I got it.
Okay. Well, thanks so much. Pleasure chatting with you, and we'll look forward to doing this again next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Take care.